News Channel 5 Network. This is Urban Outlook. This program sponsored by Connie London, a certified agent at the Insurance Exchange.
Hello and welcome to Urban Outlook. I'm April Eaton. Thank you so much for being with us today. You know, it's always a hot topic of conversation for us here, and that is how our minority businesses are doing, whether they're thriving, whether they're growing, whether there are opportunities for African Americans and other minorities to get their businesses to where they want to be. One of the gurus in the industry, we might say, Marilyn Robinson, is the executive director of Nashville Minority Business Center. She has been a fixture in this community and with that program for 33 years now. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thank
and
you.
Also joining us is Ashley Northington, who is an agency director at Denure Brand and Public Relations Firm, one of our African American businesses that you're showcasing today. Thank you both for being with us on the show.
Welcome. I'm glad to be here.
So as I said, Marilyn, you know, we often have this topic of conversation where we try to see how our businesses are doing, how our minority businesses are faring. And if you would sort of maybe give a little bit of an update report card, if you will, on the state of our black businesses and minority businesses in the Metro Nashville area. How are we doing?
Well, I regret to report that in the area of public contracting, we're still at the same place. And that's on all public contracting levels, state government, local government, and federal government. And public contracting is a big arena, and everybody wants to get in. Your Boeing's, every major company has some connection with public contracting because government is the biggest corporation that we have. So that's a logical place to go. But we are pretty much in the same place. We have conducted disparity studies at the state level. We've conducted a series of disparity studies at the local level. And it's still the same. The consultants recommend race-conscious remedies to bring the numbers up. But typically, the public officials don't have the political will to take the race-conscious measures to increase the spending and to take the necessary steps to do what we need to grow businesses. I see growing businesses owned by minorities as an economic development tool. Like as governors think about how they attract large corporations to the city to have jobs, if the arena of public contracting is opened, it would allow more companies owned by minorities to create jobs because they will have more contracting opportunities. So Ashley and I, and we have a fairly large group of people that we're working with, that's going to be our push, our next focus. We filed a caption bill last year, but we haven't put the meat on it. But we want to amend a bill at the state level to create a pilot project. And it's not going to be for everybody, but a defined quantity of companies based on those that are already registered, willing and able. We'd like to create a modified version of the 8A contracting program, which is a business development program. Yeah.
Well, what are the barriers when you say that we're not faring well when it comes to capturing those contracts that are available through our government entities? Is it that we are getting outbid? Is it that we don't have companies that have the skill set in order to be able to provide the service that's needed? What's the barriers there?
Well,
what are the barriers there?
Policy. Some of the policies are the barriers because it may be convenient to bundle contracts. If you're doing a janitorial service, or say the state government is contracting for janitorial services, they can put all 500 buildings under one contract. What does that do? That limits the competition.
So that means only the very big companies are able to manage all of those 500 buildings versus separating it out and allowing more companies to come in.
Yeah, you're restricting competition.
Gotcha.
So if you want to maximize, as you say, savings by bundling contracts, well, maybe you could do 90% of that and allow 10% of janitorial services to be put in a pool for small companies to compete, not to set aside or, that still compete among the same size. So that's a policy decision. And oftentimes when you develop your request for proposals, you're writing in a way in which you restrict companies. They won't be able to bid anyway. And then there are other artificial barriers. Say, for instance, there are very large insurance requirements, but it may not be necessary. If it's a lower risk, you should make the insurance requirements match the risk. And then there's bonding, and there are all kinds of issues with bonding, but it could be that you could buy the bond and put everybody under the umbrella.
I was getting ready to say, because you weren't suggesting that you don't have a company that's licensed and bonded, because in this day and time, that's how you have to operate, right? You've got to have those protections in place. But you're saying that there's a better way for government entities to pull these contracts together by offering some of those pieces to allow smaller businesses to play in the arena.
Exactly. To allow them to play in the arena.
Gotcha. Ashley, you've got a business that you're running, and talk just a little bit about, from your perspective, even in the PR business as a communicator, what things you deal with to try to make sure you grow your brand and be able to dabble in these other bigger worlds of government contracting. And I don't know whether you touch that area or not, but how does it work for you?
Sure. So there's a process that we are required to undergo. So we have to get registered and certified with various entities in order to even have the opportunity to bid on some of the public contracts. And I think that I speak for many small businesses when I say one of the largest barriers we have is that it's perceived capacity. So sometimes we don't get opportunities. It's not because we're not qualified to do the work. It's not because we're not good enough to do the work. It's because they perceive us as being, these smaller entities, so they don't think that we can handle the work. But we can. Another challenge that I think that many businesses like mine face is that oftentimes larger corporations will partner with us to bid on public contracts. As I'm sure you know, the government requires that they have a certain number of minority participation or small business participation. And so oftentimes they will use my certification, for example, to bid on the contract, but then when they get the contract, they don't necessarily funnel any of the work to a business, to this business. I'm not saying I've experienced that.
Right.
I just know that happens.
Yes,
right.
That's interesting, because back to your point, where if it's sort of mandated and required that that these public contracts include minority or small businesses, then it seems like it would automatically happen. But it sounds like there's a way that it may not.
Right.
It's a way that it just doesn't happen. So we've got to do things differently, and that's why we have decided to launch a program just to focus on public contracting and just to have a core curriculum to deal with public contracting and attack it from both angles and on the policy side. Right? Have a specific program so we can measure, have more accountability, because it's so abstract now. And I don't care how we dice it, we always end up at 2%.
Right.
Of only 2% representation. Minorities businesses make up 2%
of the spending.
Well, ethnic minorities make up about 4% of the total spend of state contracts. Black businesses make up about 2%, roughly, of the total spend of like this $3.6 billion. Black businesses represent about 2% of that total.
Just can't seem to budge the needle.
Right, and it's been like that for years.
Well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, I know we've got MedWeek coming up in October. One of the topics, or at least the theme of this year's celebration, the road to public contracting, breaking the barriers, mastering the challenges. We're going to talk about that program and opportunities for people and more when we come back. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this.